Hey my good friends, Sam Haymart with Test Driven TV. Today we are in the heart of the city here in Phoenix, Arizona, and we are test driving the 2025 Mazda CX-70, and this is the plug-in hybrid. All right, my dear friends, let's have a good look at the vehicle that Mazda has given us to evaluate this week. This is the 2025 Mazda CX-70, and the CX-70 is essentially identical to the CX-90. The only big difference is the fact that this only has 2 rows of seating instead of 3. The sheet metal, the body structure, the chassis, the powertrain, everything is 100% identical. There are other little differences in the styling, such as the front fascia and some of the grille details and some of the interior trims, but this is essentially identical. It's basically the choice of, do you want a 2-row or a 3-row SUV? The one we have here is a fully loaded top-of-the-line trim grade. It's pricing out at $59,000 and some change. It has the PHEV logo there on the side because this has a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder electric motor and a pretty sizable battery that allows it to be a plug-in hybrid. It can run on electric power all by itself. It can run on both. And so we'll be talking a little bit more about that when we get on the drive. As far as styling is concerned, it's a handsome vehicle, I think. Soul red is the color on this one. It's one of the most beautiful colors, I think, Mazda has ever put out, and they put it on most all of their vehicles. It really lights up in the sun today. You can just see that. It's just deep and glossy and crisp. Wheels on this one are 21-inch alloys. Pretty handsome looking, technically styled wheels. Now on this one, we do have black wheel arch moldings and lower rocker trims, and all of the trim around the windows is a combination of flat and gloss black. Coming around to the rear 3/4 view, I do want to point out up on the roof, this has the full panoramic glass roof up there. Big roof, lots of glass and built-in roof rails in the nice gloss black trim. When you look at the rear of this vehicle, it's actually quite bulky looking, and you'll note that it's essentially the same exact sheet metal that you're going to find on the CX-90 that can also afford that 3rd row back there. Really the only difference when you look back there between this and the CX-90 is a little bit of design detail in the rear fascia and some of the treatments back there. But this is otherwise identical in the back to the CX-90, and it's a clean look. This does have a power hatch on this one, and the lower fascia is well designed. It's handsome, it's tidy. The interior of the CX-70 is a place that, just like when I reviewed the CX-90 last year, is a very impressive collection of high quality materials, modern design, and some pretty nice feature content. This one has a completely black interior, but it's got some nice highlights with some gold tan colored stitching and these beautiful leather seats, perforated, both heated and ventilated up front. They're very comfortable, and I've really enjoyed sitting in them this week. The ventilating feature has been very helpful here in Arizona. It still feels like summertime here, even though it's windy and a little bit rainy today. Overall, this is an interior that's just well put together in terms of ergonomics and design. It's handsome to the look. Ahead of me is a 12.3-inch instrument cluster, fully digital. Although it is designed to look like an analog gauge set, it is fully customizable and it offers plenty of information in a very business-like way. I really appreciate that. A nice leather covered steering wheel that feels good in your hands. The infotainment system is up here on the top, another 12.3-inch screen, which we'll talk about separately. Down below that is a nice big bank of hard controls for the climate control system. It is not buried in the menu up here on the infotainment screen, thank goodness. A lot of nice controls, easy to read and understand. Down below, a nice cubby for your phone. This one has a wireless charger on it, and I like the fact that it's right there in plain easy view. A conventional toggle shifter behind that, drive mode selector, cup holders off to the right. Kind of a nice placement over here out of the way. However, because they are a little bit smallish and up against the dash, some big gas station cups might not work out so well here. Behind that is the control puck and main button set for the infotainment system. Here is a nice clamshell door opening console storage area. Now, what I will share with you here is that while it has a nice large rectangular footprint, it is not very deep. The footprint is such that a rectangular tissue box could probably fit in here, but I'm not sure it's deep enough. It's very shallow, and that is mostly because we do have a front engine rear drive layout here with the drivetrain, and so there is a bit of a hump here that has to be accommodated for. As mentioned on the exterior walk around, above me is a panoramic sunroof. It does have an opening front section, and that does have a fully opaque cover that can close if you don't want the sun beating in on you all the time. The rear seat of the CX-70 is a place that, as you can see, is quite spacious. These seats are set for my height, about 5'8", 5'9", depending on what I'm wearing for shoes, and I've got about 4 inches ahead of my knees. So it doesn't feel claustrophobic at all, and it shouldn't for a vehicle of this size. The other nice thing is that the seating height here is pretty good. Sometimes they put the seat too low and knees are perched up, but this feels just right. And these seats do have enough bolstering to sort of hold you in position. Yet, this is soft enough and contoured enough that I think that even with 3 across, it would be comfortable for everybody. There is a fold-down armrest here in the center, and plenty of amenities back here. This one on this trim grade does have heated seats in the back, as well as a full control panel back here for the HVAC. Also a couple of extra ports for charging, in addition to AC vents. Very important here in Phoenix, Arizona. Also really nice is the set of window shades that are back here. Nice touch, helps my lighting back here today. Keeps the light over there from making the exposure a little bit off. I love it when they do that, but it's comfortable. Now these seats, they do fold down in a 60-40 split, and as you can see, this has a very sizable cargo area, and that's because this does have the same body shell as the 3-row CX-90, but doesn't have that third row back there taking up space. So you really can enjoy all of this, and with a push of a button, these seats go down, and it's just quite easy to get into this thing and load it up without having to do a lot of effort. Underneath that deck is a jack and a number of doodads for that, as well as an area to store your charger. You will not, however, find a spare tire on this vehicle. This is an interior that, very much like when I tested the CX-90, I'm very impressed with. The fit and finish is exquisite. The quality, the materials, the look, the feel, it very much feels its price. And did I mention that these seats were comfortable? I love comfortable seats and nice materials to touch and hold on to. This interior gets 5 out of 5 stars. After just glowing about the interior, we have to have a conversation about this infotainment system. This is a larger screen than what we've seen in previous Mazdas that we've tested for the most part, but it's the same old show, to quote a politician of late. This has a control puck down here on the center console with a large knob and a couple of other buttons, and a screen over here that is not a touchscreen. You have to control this entirely through this sort of archaic, old-fashioned puck down here. It's so 20 years ago, if I'm honest. And there are some buttons here on the steering wheel that you can use for a couple of things. But when you combine this archaic control puck and button set with the fact that the menu structure on the system it's almost like an Atari from the early 1980s. I feel like I'm playing Pong on here. Remember that? Yeah, it's almost that good. The way the menus are laid out, you have to twist your way and press buttons and twist and puck and twist and press and puck and twist your way up and down menu trees to get to the most common things. And just tuning a radio station on the FM dial, a nightmare. This is literally one of the worst systems in the business. And I said that every time I test a Mazda. The rest of the world has moved on. And I know all you Mazda people out there always comment on my videos and you think I'm out of my mind, you think I don't like technology, blah, 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 blah. The fact of the matter is this is garbage. This is absolute trash compared to what every other manufacturer out there offers in the way of ease of use, feature content, and modern technology. I will give it the fact that because it does have wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, it will let you use it as a touchscreen if you happen to be living in one of those two apps. And luckily I do. So in my week with it, I didn't have to use this Atari Pong structure. I was able to pretty much live in Apple CarPlay and use it as a touchscreen and not have to mess with this, because this is awful. So outside of that, this does have a great backup camera. It's a 360-degree camera that's High resolution, it's got beautiful views. It makes it really easy to parallel park this. It makes it easy to put it right where you want it in the space. This also has a great sound system, 12 speaker Bose audio, and it is these things that save this thing from having an awful infotainment score. It gets 4 out of 5 stars. All right, my friends, let's go for a drive and see what this is all about. So this is the plug-in hybrid, which means instead of the inline 6, which has made a lot of headlines, this has a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder engine and an 8-speed automatic transmission. In between the two of those is an electric motor that's quite powerful. There's a 17.8 kilowatt hour battery that powers the electric motor that you can plug in and you can charge that up. This has a range of about 25 EPA estimated miles on electric only power before this really starts behaving like a more conventional hybrid. The electric motor is very powerful, 192 horsepower, so it can drive on electric only power quite fine, even up to freeway speeds. The gasoline engine, 189 horsepower. Not the most powerful gasoline engine in the class, but with the help of the electric motor, it all works together quite well. In fact, the total horsepower here is 323 horsepower, 369 pound-feet of torque. That's actually a pretty good amount of power for this vehicle, even though it is quite heavy with a 5,198 pound curb weight. Because the electric motor has plenty of power, driving around town and on the freeway in electric only mode is just fine. And if you really ask for power, if you mash the pedal all the way to the floor, it'll fire up the gasoline engine and bring it to life so that you can have that full horsepower that's advertised. Only with the two powertrains working together do you get that horsepower rating. Normally, I don't like to do our talk and drive routine in traffic, and one of the reasons for that is because we have to keep stopping and going, but that's giving me the opportunity to really sort of talk about the fact that this is a powertrain that's very refined in the way it operates. The stopping and starting of the electric motor and the transition between it and electric power is almost seamless. It's very well done. The level of refinement is pretty impressive. Now, while this does not have the same level of refinement that the inline 6 does when the gasoline engine is running, they've given it a nice sound. Not bad at all. And it's got good response when you summon both the electric motor and the gasoline engine together to get all of it. So there's plenty of power, and because this has a traditional automatic transmission instead of a continuously variable transmission like many hybrids do, it's got a traditional driving experience. It feels like a normal car. Fuel economy. Well, with a plug-in hybrid, that's always a difficult conversation to have because you really never know. It really depends on how much you're charging this battery, how much time you're spending in EV mode. It could be 1,000,000 miles to the gallon if you never use the gasoline engine. But if you do a blended mix like most people do, it really just depends on what you're going to get. The EPA sticker quotes 56 mpge, which is a blended equivalent based on a formula. Again, not really relevant to most people's life, depending on how they actually drive. It also quotes a 25 mpg actual mileage when it's in hybrid mode. It's not the most efficient hybrid when it comes to using the gas engine all the time. That's because it is big and heavy, almost 5,200 pounds, and it does have a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder engine, which has to work. So it being a plug-in hybrid does make it somewhat compromised when that battery is depleted. I was able to achieve 29 mpg this week as a blended average with a little bit of charging it up and a little bit of not charging it up. So that's just food for thought when it comes to the mpg. If you're used to having a plug-in hybrid where, you know, driving around in the city, it's possible that you never use the gasoline engine if you don't use this for a lot of long-term commuting. And while it is refined, as I mentioned, there are still a few little quirks that you have to deal with when it comes to having a hybrid powertrain with things going on and off. This powertrain gets 4.5 out of 5 stars. When it comes to ride, drive, and handling, this is a chassis that has what we would call all the technical bells and whistles. It's got a double wishbone front suspension. It has a multi-link independent rear suspension. It's got large brakes, large wheels, which are important because this has a large curb weight. Here's a speed hump. No clunks, no thunks. It works pretty good, but there I kind of got off on the weeds with that. So it passes a speed hump test. It feels its price going over bumps, speed bumps, manhole covers, and other irregularities in the surface. This has a nice feel to it. What I don't have here is an adjustable suspension, although it's not really necessary. They did a nice compromise in the tuning. It is a bit firm, but not overly so, going over cracks, manhole covers, and some road irregularities with these low profile tires and large wheels. So this is a chassis that has very much the feeling of something that you might find from Germany in the way it acts and behaves, and it really feels its price. This chassis gets 4.5 out of 5 stars. So the last part of our conversation is always, is it worth the money? Well, this is priced at $59,000 and some change, just a tick under 60, and this is the most you can spend on this vehicle in the plug-in hybrid variant. Now, we've looked at it, we've had a sit inside, we have driven it, and so we've talked about all of those things. When I look at price, when I look at value, I also take into things like warranty coverage, which is class average here, but the build quality is quite good. This feels every bit its price. It feels like the luxury vehicle that Mazda is really putting forth. And Mazda as a brand has really sort of raised their game. They've become a bit more of a premium brand than they used to be. And so they're priced like it. And so with the features that are here, with the dynamics and the driving experience and everything that you get for the money in terms of technical on the spec sheet, I think this is a pretty good value. I put that at 4.5 out of 5 stars. When you put that in with everything we've already talked about, we're at 4.5 stars for the review. Quite good. Now, if you're looking at an inline 6 model or a CX-90, we have a review on an inline 6 CX-90 right there, virtually identical to this vehicle. So if it's about the engine, you can get a review on what we think about that there. And or if you're just thinking about the 3-row, but these vehicles are otherwise identical. So you can also subscribe to your YouTube channel down there. Either way, stay tuned.